Rankings Wednesday, week 4 is upon us, and we're going to kind of crush through some of these rankings. I've got Fantasy Pros Pat Fitzmaurice joining us next on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Jeff Erickson, and I'm here with Pat Fitzmaurice from Fantasy Pros and FantasyPros.com. Pat, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well, Jeff. Thanks for having me. I'm doing okay. Did not get destroyed by more injuries in week 3. So
That's good.
Keeping afloat coming into week 4.
Yeah. I'll tell you where I did get destroyed, and I think everybody in Pentathlon has, and that's Survivor. We're in a triple elimination Survivor pool, and half the pool is out after 3 weeks. Triple elimination. It's crazy.
I'm out 0-3.
Oh no.
Yeah. So that's rough. I'm going to be, I'm doing pretty well in the other categories, but I'm going to be looking at that horrible score in the Survivor pool, dragging me down all year, and it's going to be painful.
But you know what? Everybody is. That's the thing is like, if those of us that are alive have 2 strikes. I don't think anybody has less than 2 strikes. It's really insane, but what a year. I did the Circuit Survivor contest, went out with my Bengals in week 1. So that was extra painful. I will never pick the Bengals again in week 1. I'll guarantee you that, because you have the pain of your own team losing, and then it costing you in a big Survivor pool too on top of that. Just brutal.
Oh man, that's rough. Yeah, it's we have a company Survivor pool that has, I think, 37 entrants in it, and we're down to it's either 3 or 4 people left going into week 4.
I had a 20-person Survivor pool that I do every year, and it was done in week 2. After week 2, just amazing, just utterly amazing this year. Let's talk first of all where we can find your work before we jump into the rankings. I know you do a lot of stuff for Fantasy Pros, including the waiver wire article every Monday morning. As I told you off air, it's my first read every week there, in addition to RotoWire stuff, of course. But you do that, and you do a number of podcasts for Fantasy Pros as well.
Thanks, Jeff. Our articles, there's plenty of stuff to find at fantasypros.com, including that aforementioned waiver article, which we always have up early Monday morning. We know people are licking their wounds sometimes after tough results and want to see, they want to start their waiver shopping early. So there's that. And then the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. We've got episodes out basically every day of the week. So people can check that out wherever they get their podcasts.
Very good. Let's talk quarterbacks. There is one quarterback so far this year that has a 300-yard passing game with 3 passing touchdowns. One, and he's had 1 game, and that is Andy Dalton, who has 1 start. What a world we're living in right now. What do you do with Andy Dalton going forward? He's got a really nice home matchup against the Bengals this week. Are you starting him anything more than a super flex league?
I've got him at quarterback 24. This week. And that might be overly cautious, Jeff. I'm comfortable starting him in Superflex. I don't know, even with the enticing revenge game narrative, if I want to roll him out this week. But it was encouraging that he sort of got that offense going, and he helped get Chuba Hubbard going. Hubbard was one of the top scoring running backs on the week. And obviously Deontay Johnson, who was not startable with Bryce Young at quarterback, now very playable coming off the monstrous week with Dalton.
Yeah, it's a tough call. I have him a little higher. I think I have him at 17, but that is like, I should want to, go ahead and pull the trigger on him. If you think it's such a great matchup. They did lose Adam Thielen, of course, that hurts. I'm low-key interested in Xavier Legette, especially in leagues that still have waivers to run. I have a number that run on Tuesday night and Wednesday morning, but I also have some like Wednesday night, Thursday. You play on so many different platforms. Your waivers are all over the place, but I'm a little interested there still.
Yeah, good reason for it. And I have to reconsider that ranking. 24 might be too low. I've just got him behind guys like Kirk Cousins, Deshaun Watson, just because of the matchup. I can justify, I guess, Aaron Rodgers, but really all kind of on the same tier for me.
Yeah, I get it there. And that's the problem, is that you get that messy tier after like 8 or 9. It gets kind of tricky pretty quick. Let's talk about a couple other guys here. Patrick Mahomes, that guy, we've heard of him before. It's a gradation difference. I have him at 5, you have him at 9, and I just think it's noteworthy. Like, you can totally justify putting him at 9. The Chargers matchup, the Chargers have played the Chiefs tough lately. I mean, the Chiefs really haven't been filling it up offensively so far, notably Sunday night. I don't know what to make of this Chiefs offense, especially if they can't get anybody besides Rashid Rice going.
I've been a Patrick Mahomes diehard with the rankings, Jeff, for a while, and I'm finally capitulating. Like, I'm moving. The baseline is going to be lower for me with Patrick Mahomes going forward. It's just going to be more of a low end quarterback 1 ranking in most cases. He's just not challenging defenses downfield anymore. It's really kind of a strange ball control attack. I mean, he's still one of the best pure passers in the game. He still provides a little bit of rushing value, but he is just not hitting on the big plays anymore. No. And it looks like Travis Kelce, I don't know if he has careened over the age cliff, but he has not been all that effective. The big chunk plays he gets are these little quick passes to Rashid Rice, where Rice makes something happen after the catch. And we're in a game script with the Chargers, who may or may not have Justin Herbert, where Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid might not have to stomp the accelerator the entire game, because how do the Chargers keep up if they don't have Justin Herbert and their offense is greatly diminished?
Right. They probably won't have Derwin James. I haven't heard anything about the appeal yet there. And they may not have Joey Bosa either. So
or maybe Joe Alt, I think, is he's banged up, and maybe Rashawn Slater too.
Yeah,
so
just your starting tackles. That's all.
Yeah, tough spot for the Chargers.
Yeah, it is a very tough spot there. So that might just be one of those games where it is, kind of a slower paced game. If I'm Harbaugh, I'm running as few plays as possible. That's for sure. And I'm almost certainly that's going to be the case. Let's talk about another quarterback, Anthony Richardson. Man, this was a really tough rewatch. Watching this Colts Bears game. Obviously, the competition level was tough last week. I don't know if it's as tough this week for them. Well, actually, I do know it's that tough for this week because it's the Bears. I mean, it's the Steelers this week. Another really tough matchup there. He's got to get his rushing yards for him to kind of earn any sort of ranking.
That's it, pretty much, because right now he is completing 49.3% of his passes. That, even in the mid 1970s, would not be an acceptable completion percentage. So not getting any business done through the air, really, and unlikely to reverse that trend against this really tough Pittsburgh defense. I have him QB 11, and I'm having a hard time justifying it, honestly, Jeff. But it's one of those situations where I always sort of err on the side of optimism when I'm ranking the running quarterbacks, because so often the outlook is bleak, and those guys get their rushing yards. And I know some people would be kicking themselves if they just got disgusted with Anthony Richardson, benched him, and he runs for 2 touchdowns against the Steelers and winds up putting up 20 plus points. Maybe that's not going to happen, and maybe he's going to lay another complete egg here, but this is a guy who did lead all quarterbacks in fantasy points per snap last year, including, he was significantly above Josh Allen, last year's leading fantasy scorer at quarterback in fantasy points per snap. I know it was a small sample size. I know he's looked absolutely awful as a passer so far, but it was the running value that was making him such a prominent scorer last year when he was playing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I have him not that much farther off. I'm at 14, but that could, I reserve the right to change, first of all. And I also kind of want to wait and see some of the news on a couple of these injured quarterbacks. Like, I want to see what happens with Brock Purdy. I might be moving him down this week. We'll see about that. But yeah, that's another tricky one there. Last quarterback I want to bring up is Jordan Love, probably returning this week. He was limited in practice as promised by the Packers, but I think he does come back this week for this big matchup against the Vikings. I don't know what to expect out of Love, and I kind of don't know what to expect out of this Vikings defense that's been so good against some quality opponents in San Francisco and Houston the last 2 weeks.
It has been, and hard for me as a Packers fan to tip my hat to the Vikings, but they might be the best coached team in the NFL right now with Kevin O'Connell at the controls offensively and Brian Flores, who's just he finds so many interesting ways to dial up pressure and to simulate pressure and sometimes back off it. And just like I would not want to quarterback a game against the Vikings defense. Like I think this would probably be the toughest challenge for a quarterback just because Flores makes things so confusing. Um, Love probably not going to be very mobile if he comes back. I would expect that maybe, although the Packers wouldn't be as run heavy as they have been with Malik Willis, that Matt LaFleur would still want to strive for a healthy balance to kind of
Mhm.
protect Jordan Love from that pressure. So my expectations would be pretty modest. I've got him at quarterback 18.
Yeah, I've got him at 13. I might be a little high. But it also people pushing at me, and my Vikings defense ranking is too low too. So those things are kind of intertwined, if you will. Uh, that is, by the way, speaking of well coached teams, I got to credit to your Packers too, because I think LaFleur's done a heck of a job. The game plan the last 2 weeks was just brilliant.
Yeah, for him to go 2-0 with Malik Willis there and just yeah, some of the play calling and even the designs of the running plays have been just so um watching, guards pulling one way and the play going the other way, just like so many interesting wrinkles. Yeah, LaFleur has really kind of emptied the playbook to get these two wins that they badly needed after starting 0-1 and losing their quarterback for a couple of games.
Absolutely. We're going to talk running backs, but first, got to share a quick note from our sponsors at Underdog. We're proud to partner with Underdog Fantasy for the NFL season. Underdog is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. In addition to their popular best ball contest, Underdog also offers great DFS pick'em games. Pick whether your favorite players will have a higher or lower stat total in this week's game for a chance to win big. You can win up to 1,000 times your money in a single night by picking between 2 and 8 players to build a pick'em entry. You can take a look at the Thursday night game, see if CD Lamb's going to beat his projection or not, and go ahead and run with it there and find a couple other ones from that game if you want to jump right in right now. Sign up with RWNFL to claim your free pick plus first time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store, and don't forget to register with my promo code RWNFL to claim your free pick plus a first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. You must be 18 and older, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. That's 1-800-839-8783 or text next step to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-389. All right. That we are moving on to the running backs. I'm here with Pat Fitzmaurice from Fantasy Pros. We got a lot of interesting running back rankings this week. Some I think the running backs have actually been surprisingly, mostly healthy and, Christian McCaffrey aside, but also productive too. I want to talk about one guy I'm not sure about, and that's Achane. I've got him down at 14 this week against Tennessee. I'm just really concerned about the whole team context right now.
I have him at 11, and I feel like I might get cold feet on that and might move him closer to where you are, Jeff, over the course of the next few days. Just the diminished capability of that offense without Tua. Last week, it just looked so bad with Skylar Thompson. Now the options are Tim Boyle and Tyler Huntley, and Huntley's had less than 2 weeks, I think, to digest the playbook and Mike McDaniel's offense, and Tim Boyle is like a Canadian Football League caliber quarterback. So
Right.
Obviously that doesn't brighten the touchdown outlook for Devon Achane. The only bright, the silver lining here is just the usage, that it doesn't, I don't think Raheem Mostert is going to be back. And they clearly want to lean into Achane and give him a lot of work. But man, when you're going 3 and out constantly, doesn't give you a lot of scoring opportunities. So that's the concern here.
Yeah, for sure. What about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Rachaad White has not been very productive. Bucky Irving is one of the trendy pickups this week. He's outrushed him the first 3 weeks. And he's still available in like 10 and 12 team leagues. I've noticed in the case of Irving. You and I play in a lot of deeper leagues where that's not the case. But what are you doing if you're stuck with Rachaad White right now?
So I've still got him ranked just ahead of Bucky this week. The changing of the guard has not come yet, but it may be imminent. We did see White outsnap Irving 42-18 last week, but Bucky gets the ball when he's in the game. On those 18 snaps, he had, I think, 9 carries, ran 7 routes, had 3 targets. And for the season, I think he's gotten a touch on like 55% of his snaps. So meanwhile, on those 42 snaps Rachaad White played, he got 6 carries. So I do think there is at least a safe-ish, flex-worthy type of floor with Rachaad White because he'll be used in the passing game still. He's undeniably good at that part of the game, not only pass catching, but as a pass blocker. But I think he might eventually give up the early down work entirely to Bucky Irving at this rate. Like Bucky's just a better inside runner than Rachaad White is, and it's pretty clear when you watch the team play that that's the case.
Who are you more out on, DeAndre Swift or Javonte Williams?
DeAndre Swift. I'm clinging to the traditional Sean Payton usage of his running backs in the passing game to sort of prop up Javonte's value, but Swift, it's hard to see any hope after what the Bears showed against a Colts run defense that had just been brutalized for more than 150 rushing yards by Joe Mixon and Josh Jacobs the first 2 weeks. And then Swift gets 17 yards on 11 carries. That offensive line is so bad, Jeff.
It is. And I thought it was going to be better. I'm gobsmacked. I really thought that they'd made the improvements. They looked better in the second half of the season last year. They're awful.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone thought it was going to be a great offensive line, but really I didn't hear anyone in the offseason suggest that it might be a problem.
Yeah, I didn't hear that either. I think I and many others have said that Caleb Williams was stepping into the best situation a number 1 draft pick quarterback has ever stepped into. And here we are, and it looks really difficult. Everything looks so difficult for them.
It really does. And, considering that they've got a good defense, they've got Caleb, they've got all this pass catching firepower. Pretty safe bet that however they spend their first round pick next year, it's going to be somewhere on the offensive line.
Yeah, you would think so there. Will it be with the new head coach? Is Matt Eberflus on one of the hottest seats out there?
I would think so. Yeah, I would not be surprised. I think Ryan Pace, the GM, is probably good for a couple more years, but I wouldn't be surprised if he cleaned house on the coaching staff.
Yeah, I think he's got to be in the top 5, along with me and my co-host Nick Whalen's respective teams' head coaches as well. We had Nick is a Jaguars fan, as you probably know, and I'm a Bengals fan. It was joint misery on Monday night with the doubleheader there.
Oh, that had to be painful. Yeah, I don't know if anyone's seat could be hotter than Doug Peterson's right now.
No, if you look at all like the first firing odds, he sits atop there, especially because they collapsed so badly last year too.
Yeah, and I mean, just the lack of development for Trevor Lawrence is just so stunning.
Yeah, it's astounding. And I saw a stat that for the 4th year running now, the Jags are leading the NFL in dropped passes. They change the receivers all the time too. They got rid of Ridley, and they're having problems now with like Brian Thomas has had a couple of drops, and Gabe Davis has had some drops. It's tough.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like they're like wide open and dropping passes though. I mean, it seems like even with Brian Thomas, it does seem like throughout that Bills game, like those guys were just wearing Bills defenders on them. Like no one was getting open. So maybe it's not all on Trevor Lawrence. He's not getting a lot of easy throws.
Yeah. Although that interception in the second quarter, Thomas was open and it was just such a bad throw.
Yeah.
Can't even say like there was a man in his face. He just airmailed it. Ugh.
Yeah. He missed his guy badly.
Yeah. What are you doing with Etienne? What's your level of concern with him?
Major. Yeah. Like the fact that all off season, Doug Peterson was talking about wanting to use Tank Bigsby more, and Bigsby has actually looked good after not looking very good in 2023, and then just the diminished state of this offense. So
Yeah.
I do have concerns. Like, I was worried in the offseason. I thought it might be an uphill climb for Travis Etienne to be a running back one again after the drop off we saw last year, where maybe halfway through the season, he was averaging about 20 PPR points per game. And over the second half, he averaged like 13. So there was the hint of the drop off, or we saw the drop off last year. And like it's continued, and it's still, we haven't seen bottom yet, perhaps.
No, I have him at ETN. I have him at 22 this week, Pat. I just,
Wow.
in which it's still a starter in most leagues, but it's way below where you would have drafted him.
And it's a tough matchup against Houston. I have him 17, and I admire your courage in having him 5 spots lower than that.
Yeah, I'm very pessimistic right now. I think, they saw that they had offensive line problems and they addressed it by doing nothing, and that's
Right.
just, I always see that. And it's super frustrating there. I see it all the time in baseball, actually. Usually in the NFL, the teams fix their problems because, they're all spending the same amount of money roughly. Seattle, the Seattle backs. Let's assume that Zach Charbonnet is starting. Walker doesn't play, just for sake of just discussion's sake, because I still think it's a tough week for Charbonnet against this Lions run defense that I think is kind of underrated. James Conner struggled against him last week.
That's it. I have Charbonnet running back 19. The Lions do have sort of a pass funnel defense. They're terrific against the run, less terrific against the pass. So that's kind of the way to attack them. On the bright side, if you are a Charbonnet investor, he's getting like 95% of the snaps with Kenneth Walker out. Like they're not even messing with Kenny McIntosh or like anyone else. It's just kind of the Charbonnet show. So even if they do decide to go pass heavy, still a pretty good bet that you get at least 14 or 15 touches out of Charbonnet.
Yeah, and Charbonnet is involved in the passing game too. Although he did contribute to the one interception that the Geno's terrible throw from the end zone. But besides that, he still had some other good catches. So I think he'll still be involved. So yeah, I'm very similar. I've got him at 24, I think, this week. But that's a range where you're still probably starting him unless you're just blessed. Like you had Jordan Mason and he stepped right in for you there. I do have a league where I do have good hard choices like that. Someone between Montgomery and Mason or Charbonnet has to sit for me in the NFFC. But that's just because 2 guys came through.
Yeah. By the way, is it just me, or is Geno like 10 times worse a quarterback whenever he's backed up against his own goal line or
Yes.
his own 10-yard line? Like that's when he always makes his worst mistakes. Like he is at least an average quarterback everywhere else on the field, and inside his own 10-yard line, he's just terrible. I don't know what
I remember the Bengals game last year. The defense pressuring Geno won the day in that game there. So when it looked like the Seattle was going to win that game, but Geno under pressure, I agree, especially in the shadow of his own end zone is, every quarterback does worse under pressure. Some quarterbacks are especially bad at it.
Yeah. Still a good spot for him this week, though. The Seattle offense is somewhat interesting. That could be a fun game.
Yeah. Zamir White might be the most frustrating, quote unquote, starting running back. They take him out on the goal line. Alexander Madison scored like 3 weeks in a row now. They take him out in passing downs. They try to establish him early, but it's a super frustrating time. I trust him more than DeAndre Swift, but that's about as far as it goes.
I have him at 35 this week. I just if you can't get a good game out of him against the Carolina Panthers, when are you going to get a usable game from him? Probably not against the Cleveland Browns this week. No. So yeah, I'm out, Jeff.
Yeah, I am too. They tried to establish him. They really did early on. But he had a couple of 5-yard runs, but there hasn't been one big play all season long. And that's just the thing that's so frustrating. And it's like, you just expect, we thought we were going to get our volume with him. He might not be great, but he's going to get volume. He's this year's like Burner Turner, if you will. Like it's his, there's nobody else. So therefore he'll be okay.
Yeah, he did have the sort of the Michael Turner profile coming into this year. That's what I was kind of worried about. At the very one of my last drafts. I had to get one share of Zamir White just in case I was wrong about him. It turned out maybe I wasn't in fading him this offseason.
Yeah. I think I'm in a similar boat that I have just one league where I did it. And it's because a lot of times I'm drafting like anchor running back. So I'm shopping in that zone for my second, third, and fourth pretty rapid succession.
Yeah, that's it. I think I added him to some team where I had a hero running back build, and he is not helping me in that running back 2 spot at all.
Nope, not at all. All right, we're going to talk wide receivers, but first we got to share a quick note from our friends over at Vivid Seats. NFL football is back. Gear up for the gridiron with Vivid Seats and score tickets to the biggest games of the year. Every touchdown, every tackle, and every eye-popping play of your favorite team, live and in person. And with Vivid Seats rewards, you earn perks with every single purchase. Each ticket you buy gets you closer to your reward. Just buy 10 tickets, then simply cash in your credit towards your 11th ticket purchase. It's that easy. Plus, Vivid Seats is offering you $20 off your first $200 ticket purchase with code RotoWire. That's code RotoWire, ROTOWIRE. From the upper deck to the front row, Vivid Seats has great tickets for all the 2024 games that matter to you. Just visit vividseats.com or download the app today. Vivid Seats, experience it live. We're talking wide receivers. I'm here with Fantasy Pros' Pat Fitzmaurice. Let's talk Tyreek Hill. Let's rip the Band-Aid off. Let's deal with this one here. We know we have to discount Tyreek Hill. The question is how much?
So I know our Fantasy Pros expert consensus ranking, the general wisdom of crowds ranking of our all the experts who contribute to that is wide receiver 21, and that's where I'm at with Tyreek Hill. I thought that they would be able to scheme ways to get him the ball quickly and let him work his magic and use his speed after the catch last week. It just it didn't work with Skylar Thompson. I don't know if it's going to work with Tyler Huntley. The floor, which we're used to being really sturdy and high for Tyreek Hill, has now it's a trapdoor floor. Right. And I think he still has that ceiling because this is still a guy who can give you a catch and run 85-yard touchdown at any given point. But man, it's just such an uncomfortable situation, especially when you drafted him at 103, 104, 105. And now you don't know whether you can start him over I don't know, JSN or Khalil Shakir, or it's a tough situation. But we have to realize that until Tua gets back, if Tua gets back, Tyreek just he doesn't have a safe floor in any given week.
No, he doesn't. How low would you go in a trade in leagues that allow trades? What's the worst receiver you'd get back that you'd be willing to accept?
Oh man. Looking at my rest of season rankings, I have got Tyreek Hill right in the neighborhood of, oh man, I need to lower this. Probably like.
By the way, I have to lower my in this week 4 ranking on him too. I've got him at like 14 or 15, and I don't think that's low enough either. So I've been doing that.
Yeah, like I wouldn't take Jameson Williams for him. I don't think I'd take maybe Stephon Diggs would be like a comparable guy. Maybe George Pickens. I might rather have Pickens than Hill at this point. It's so depressing to talk about, Jeff.
Yeah, it is. Waddle was actually better than Hill last week, but I would rather have, still have Tyreek over Waddle.
Sure.
But yeah, both of those guys, it's tough. It's really tough. I don't know. I think answering my own question, I think it's like maybe, it's either Diggs or Pickens for me too. In that sort of range, maybe Godwin. I don't know. Somewhere in that range.
Yeah, I think I'd rather have Godwin at this point. I mean, Pickens and Diggs kind of close calls, but yeah, the one thing is, I mean, if Tua somehow does only miss a month, and you get Tua back with Tyreek, cashing out now, you might regret it if you sell too low.
Agreed. Actually, I think I'm gonna go a little higher. I'll say Ayuk is probably like the worst player I'd accept back in return. We haven't seen that big game from Ayuk yet, so I think that's one of the reasons why that actually might be viable too. So I mean, Tyreek Hill's so healthy though. I mean, it's I don't know. I'm going back and forth. That thing is, I only have him in one league, and no one's sent me a trade offer yet, so I haven't been put to the test on it yet. So we'll see. Because it's easy to say, oh yeah, I'll do that, but then when you actually get that offer, do you click on it there? Do you say yes on it there? That's the tough part. Jauan Jennings won people leagues if you picked him up last week. Help me. I got him in the Scott Fishbowl that where it's just desperate. I had AJ Brown and Pacheco out. It's like 7 different flexes, or 5 different flexes. Okay, let's plug them in. Let's see what happens. What do you do for his second game around as a starter here? Are you going back to the well? Is he a top 20 guy for you?
He is a top 20 guy for me, actually. And I will probably knock him out of the top 20 if we get confirmation that George Kittle is going to be back. I know they said they expected him to be back at practice this week, which suggests he has a good chance to play. I also know that with the amount of man defense that the Patriots play in coverage, maybe that bodes a little better for Brandon Ayuk than for Jennings, who seems like he's more of the zone beater. But then again, I just don't know if Brandon Ayuk is like ready to be sort of an alpha receiver after missing all of training camp for the 49ers. I think that's a big reason for the slow start. And it just seemed like last week against the Rams, so often it looked like Jauan Jennings was the first read for Brock Purdy.
Yes.
And like they gave Jauan Jennings a pretty good amount of money in the offseason when he was a restricted free agent. They gave him, I think, a little over 15 million over 2 years with like 8 million guaranteed. They apparently have confidence in Jennings that if they ever need him to step up, he can do it. And he showed last week that confidence was well-founded.
Yeah, they actually liked him as a third down guy last year. They like his blocking. And that's one of the things that's so important with the Niners too, is the receivers have to block if you're on the Niners.
Yeah, he just really does seem to fit in with the team culture. And I think Kyle Shanahan likes him a lot.
Indeed. Rashid Shaheed reflects a pretty good philosophical debate when you're trying to figure out what you want for your third receiver. Do you want a boomer bust guy, or do you want a floor guy? Because he's definitely not a floor guy.
No, I'm willing to live with the boom and bust. I would be happy to have Rashid Shaheed as my third receiver on a lot of my teams where I'm not playing someone like Amari Cooper, Terry McLaurin as a third receiver. Like I have a little more faith in those guys, but Shaheed is just maybe a tier below those guys. And if you've got Cooper, McLaurin as a third, you probably went pretty wide receiver heavy in your draft. The nice thing about Shaheed is it is a very skinny target tree with the Saints. It's Olave, it's Shaheed. There's not much else. I think like Mason Tipton of Yale is their third receiver. They don't get a lot out of their tight ends in the passing game. It's those two and Kamara, and that's pretty much it. And maybe week 3 was a reminder that the Saints are not going to be one of the most prolific passing teams in the league, despite what we saw the first 2 weeks. But still, when it's that skinny a target tree, I like investing in Olave, Shaheed, and Kamara. I mean, those 3 are looking like they are going to have a really robust target share. Maybe not so much for Shaheed, but that is not a guy who needs a lot of targets to produce. Like he is a big play waiting to happen.
I think the Falcons are going to dedicate a lot of their resources to stopping Olave too. So I think Shaheed takes on a special level of importance this week in this matchup.
Yeah, I know we let a lot of people down, but Shaheed was actually close to like 1 or 2 big plays last week too. There was one that looked like it could have been a long touchdown. I think a defender arrived like last second, and then maybe the ball like clanged off his helmet or something. But like it was close. We almost got the Shaheed payoff again last week.
Yeah, we sure did. Especially early on, there was that one that just should have come down with there. That would have changed the way the game flow was for sure too, because the Saints were doing nothing otherwise. Jayden Reed and the other Green Bay Packer wide receivers. How much are we moving them up now that Jordan Love's coming back? Probably.
I'm behind consensus. I think our expert consensus ranking is wide receiver 22, and I've got him at 28. I worry that they run a lot, continue to
Right.
run a lot to protect Jordan Love from the Vikings pass rush. And they still have a lot of different options in the passing game. Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, Tucker Kraft. We saw that big game from Reed in week 1, and obviously the last 2 games haven't been quite as pretty. They've manufactured a few touches to him on like easy completions, running plays. So like the floor is pretty sturdy. I don't know what the ceiling is going to be this week.
Yeah. I agree. He's the highest of my Green Bay guys. It's interesting that Dobbs is on the field all the time and gets a decent number of targets, or at least a number of routes run, but it just doesn't have the explosiveness there. But and I've kind of given up on Wicks. I haven't given up yet, but I have him in a lot of leagues and I haven't cut him. But I'm at that point where if I'm forced to cut, I can't start the guy, and if I have another guy hurt, maybe I have to cut Wicks. I'm almost at that point now.
It would probably take an injury to at least one other Green Bay receiver
Right.
for Wicks to be fantasy viable. He's kind of a best ball guy because they'll sneak him in and all of a sudden he'll have a big play out of nowhere. But as far
Right.
as week to week reliability, just not there.
No. The wide receiver equivalent to Travis Etienne for me is Michael Pittman. Just destroyed by Anthony Richardson's shortcomings so far. The game plans, just they're not running as many plays. They're I think the fewest offensive plays in football so far, no more than 54 in any given game. Obviously, wide receivers are going to get hurt by that, but this is a guy that was going in the 3rd round, and now I think we both have him in our 30s in the rankings.
Yeah, I'm in a really deep league, Jeff. It's 16 teams where I desperately need a quarterback upgrade because Trevor Lawrence is my number one, and like the Patriots are my other quarterbacks in this. I was offered the chance to move up to like Geno from Trevor Lawrence, but it would have required me downgrading at wide receiver from Drake London to Michael Pittman. I didn't
Mhm.
bring myself to do it. Like I'm too worried about what the outlook is. And like I think Anthony Richardson can recover because he has rushing ability. I don't want to play any of the Colts pass catchers, like none of them. You know,
Right.
can't justify even like rostering Josh Downs or like Alec Pierce. I mean, I know Alec Pierce hits on the occasional bomb, but again, a guy I'm happy if I have on my best ball rosters, maybe, but I don't ever want to start him in a managed league because the potential floor is 0 in any given week. And Pittman's a guy who doesn't score a lot of touchdowns and doesn't make a lot of big plays. So he needs volume to sort of make his bones in fantasy, and he's just not going to get it, it looks like.
No. And it's so frustrating because you saw that they paid him. You saw what he did last year. It's just such a bad setup for him right now. Maybe Richardson improves with more reps. Maybe he's this year's Jordan Love, where second half of the season is a completely different quarterback. And we talked about him being in the circle of trust because Love, if you obviously know this, you're a Packers guy. Love looked terrible early on. Like the Denver game was just a horrible game for him last year.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Had some rough games early last year in his first starts when Aaron Rodgers had COVID. He went into Kansas City in a game where their defense actually played probably their best game ever under Joe Barry, their old defensive coordinator, and Love couldn't even pick up a first down. So yeah, there is hope, and that's the thing, Jeff. Like Anthony Richardson, not a ton of college playing experience, lost most of his rookie year. He just needs reps because I know I talked to like Matt Waldman, the great film room guy, and
Yeah, he's awesome.
yeah, and Waldman has talked to someone who was sort of a quarterback tutor to Anthony Richardson, and he said like Richardson is actually really sharp as far as like nuanced stuff, film room work, manipulating safeties with his eyes, things like that. Like he's actually more advanced as a passer than he gets credit for. He just hasn't played a lot. Like he just needs more time.
Mhm.
Way too early to give up on him, but right now as a passer, I mean, he's well below average.
We're going to talk about the disaster that is the tight end position. But first, quick note from our friends at Fanduel. NFL kickoff is here, and Fanduel is giving away a special new user offer to RotoWire fans. Sign up and bet $5 on any Fanduel market and receive $200 in bonus bets. Visit sportsbook.fanduel.com or download Fanduel Sportsbook in the App Store today to claim this offer. I'm here with Pat Fitzmaurice from fantasypros.com. All right, tight ends have been so difficult this year. There's not a single one of those premium tight ends you're like, yeah, I'm good. This has been great this year. Not one. Who do you have as your number one tight end this year or this week?
Brock Bowers.
All right, Brock Bowers. Nice.
And pretty interesting that he would be number one, considering that there's been talk about his quarterback being benched potentially.
Right.
He's healthy. He's really good. Maybe arguably the best tight end prospect to ever come into the league. A little bit of a drop off in week 3 in his production in a game where kind of nothing went right for the Raiders, but he's been ultra productive otherwise. There's just a lot to like here. And you're right, Jeff. It's been a total wasteland all off season. I talked about thinking that the tight end position finally had depth.
Right.
And I am like Charlie Brown trying to kick the football and having Lucy pull it out from under me at the last minute. Because like every time I think that, it all blows up, and I'm never going to talk myself into thinking tight end is deep ever again.
That's right. I've made that point. Like I wanted to get a top 9 tight end. I don't have to get a top 3, but I wanted to get a top 9. It stops at Jake Ferguson for me. I wanted to get someone in there. It didn't matter. Just didn't matter where I got it there, but so far. But yeah, Bowers is awesome. Bowers was not top 9, by the way. He was outside of that because of the quarterback situation, because of the Raiders. Maybe I should have just realized, though, they're just going to funnel the ball to him, and it would be okay. There's been a lot of people complaining about production from the veteran tight end. Maybe the age cliff is coming, but enough about Mark Andrews. Now, I do want to talk Mark Andrews here, as I know there's real problems here. Snap share, concerns about his health, target routes run. There's not a single good metric right now about Mark Andrews. He had more targets, I guess, than likely in week 2, but what are you doing with Mark Andrews this week?
Probably just holding him. I'm forced to start him in one league. I'm lucky enough to have him in one league where I drafted with a partner, and for some reason Brock Bowers fell like really far in that league, and we're just, well, we might as well just draft Brock Bowers even though we don't need him. Mm-hmm. Turns out we needed him. So I don't know what to do here, Jeff. I'm concerned about the low snap count last week. He only played like 21 snaps, only ran 4 routes, but Andrews kind of has that George Kittle thing where sometimes the plan is for him to do a lot of blocking and not a lot of route running. But the health is the issue. I don't know if he's healthy or not. And he had that tightrope surgery that was so difficult for Tony Pollard to come back from last year. And maybe that's kind of what's going on with Mark Andrews. It's just hard to explain. Now, would I be shocked if he came out and gave us an 8-catch, 90-yard, 2-touchdown game? Not entirely. I'm not ready to totally write him off, but that said, I think I have him ranked like tight end 13 this week, and even that feels too high.
Yeah, I've got him at 10. It's very uncomfortable, but I'm thinking against Buffalo, they're going to need to throw the ball more often, so that might have something to do with it there. Uncle Ted points out the car wreck is also no problem with Andrews too. He might have, because he basically missed 2 weeks. That was kind of a sneaky under the radar thing. Like he wasn't practicing towards the end, and because I think it was like they don't start their starters in the last preseason game. Then there's that week off, so we're kind of under the radar there. He was missing a lot of reps, and it turns out those matter too, maybe.
Yeah, he makes a great point about that. And like they never really specify the injuries involved there. So yeah, it's just kind of a murky situation for us to try to sift through.
Yeah, exactly. Last tight end I want to ask you about is Cole Kmet. We're worried a lot about his snap count, his target share, just the fact that they had Gerald Everett as well. But last week, we finally saw a very productive week out of Kmet and realized this is what he's capable of doing.
Yeah. So, Jeff, I know that sometimes when we will second guess coaches, a lot of people will say, well, you're only a fantasy analyst. They've been coaching football for so long. For you to think that you know more than them is just silly. But I think a lot of fantasy analysts have been scratching their heads. We're in the preseason and we're in week 1 when Gerald Everett was basically getting as many snaps as Cole Kmet, because pretty much all the fantasy analysts knew that Cole Kmet was 10 times better than Gerald Everett. And for some reason, Shane Waldron didn't recognize that right away. I think he recognizes it now, because Cole Kmet's snap shares are way up. He was over 80% last week.
Right.
Granted, a lot of garbage time production fueling his 10 catch game, but I think we can probably move Cole Kmet back into our circle of trust, or at least with the tight end landscape being so bleak, consider him maybe a low end tight end 1, high end tight end 2. After what we saw in week 1, I had him I think out of my top 20 in my week 2 rankings. Now I've got him back at let's see, tight end.
I think you have him at 12, right?
Yeah, tight end 12.
And I have him at 14, and I feel like that might even be low. So that's just the thing. It's like I want to see it again from Waldron, because I know he's like to split tight end reps in Seattle before. That kind of concerns me a little bit, but yeah, I think we've seen this before, that he's capable of these games, and then you just wonder why he disappears at times. One more tight end I'm going to bring up. Brandon Boone brought it up in the chat, and he goes, no one's talking about Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz was my pivot last week when I lost Kittle on Friday. It turned out this was going to be very serious for Kittle, that I had to find a rush pickup. Zach Ertz was my guy to pick up. What do you think about Ertz? He seems like he's getting a lot of snaps and a decent number of targets so far.
Yeah, I have to move him back up. He's still going to be a tight end 2 for me in the rankings. I had him kind of down as a low tight end 2. I'm a little worried that eventually maybe Ben Sinnott cuts into his snaps and targets a little bit. The highly drafted rookie from Kansas State. But yeah, I mean, he is steady, and it does seem like, although they started to open up the offense a little bit in week 3, Jayden Daniels has been operating close to the line of scrimmage mainly, and that seems to suit Ertz, a guy who's not going to beat anyone downfield anymore, but seems to have a knack for finding creases in defenses and getting open. So probably, an underrated source, especially when tight end is this bad, Jeff. Zach Ertz might be an underrated source of fantasy points.
Yeah, just a floor guy. And I think there's value in that for sure. If you want to check out more of our ranks, because obviously we can't cover every player here, but you can check out Pat's ranks and my ranks. I've posted both in the chat for the live stream. I'll also post in the RotoWire, the description for the RotoWire podcast. You can check it out on RotoWire, rotowire.com/try. Get you a free peek behind the paywall for a couple days. No credit card at all required. We've been doing the free trial thing for 20 years. It works. So rotowire.com/try. And of course, you can check it out at fantasypros.com for Pat's ranks. And those, I believe, are free. So you can check that out for yourself there. And Pat, I want to thank you for your insight, your time. It's always fun having a conversation with you.
Yeah, always love talking to you, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Follow Pat on Twitter. You can do that at Fitz_FF. And of course, just check them out at Fantasy Pros. Thanks to everybody for listening. Thanks to all of our awesome sponsors. Again, rotowire.com/try for that trial. And of course, smash that like and subscribe button. Thanks for listening. Take care.